Hi guys, welcome back to ECAfrica, the podcast where we speak about really cool entrepreneurs in South Africa and across the continent. Today's guest is very exciting. She's so young, she's so dynamic, but she's also got a story that is really important to the South African landscape. So Leigh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
I'm really, really excited to get through to have this conversation. I feel like I briefly heard about you, and then in our off camera conversations, you seem so dynamic, you seem so driven by what you're doing. So I'm really, really excited to get to speak to you. Thank you for coming.
Let's do this. Thank you.
So one thing that I like to ask our guests to do, I could introduce you, but I think that you guys do the best. Can you maybe give us a quick brief outline of who you are and what you do?
Okay, my name is Leigh Thegwani. I am the founder of Unfiltered Media House. It is an Afrocentric media agency that specializes in content development, digital marketing, public relations, and basically anything VR or content that you could ever imagine. We are 2 years old. Legally 2 years old. And aside from the business, I am also a musician. I am a media activist, and most of my works as an activist are aligned to what I offer as services in the agency.
Thank you for that. Okay, so one thing I like to do with our entrepreneurs is get a little bit of a background of why you got into entrepreneurship. So maybe could you tell us how you got to this point and a little bit about your story, however comfortable you feel sharing, but just so that our viewers can understand that entrepreneur can look different, right? Depending on what you're doing, how you're doing it, what your project is, all of that.
Yeah. Okay, so my story actually starts, I think in 2018-19. I had just finished matric, and the rush, of having to apply to universities. You actually do it obviously in grade 11 to apply and all. But my journey started after I had applied to universities, and I would get rejecting letters either for space constraints, or I just didn't meet the cut, if I'm being honest.
Right.
And then from there, I guess I was like, okay, I can't sit back, I was still living in Soweto then with my family. I'm like, but we can't just sit back. I can't do anything. Let me find a sales job. Found a sales job, and that didn't work out. Like that, yeah. And then from there, I was like, okay, but I am creative. I'm a musician. I am into communicating or telling better stories, because I had a background in writing poetry. I was writing music. I was actively releasing music as well. So I was like, okay, I need to find a way to put value on my creativity. And I know it's like, you put a price on your soul, basically, but I just had to find a way to do that. So then I got into incubations. The first one I got into was the South African Creative Industries Incubator. And there they basically taught us like the basic, like that basic business model canvas thing. But I was like, okay, but there's more to it than this table. Even though this table pretty much sums up what a business could look like or should look like, there was more to it than that. So I would also get into your Google Skills Shop, just to upskill myself, to at least have the technical understanding side of things. And then I guess from there we just grew, we started entering pitching competitions. And when I won my first pitching competition through the Business and Arts South Africa, that's when I was like, okay, so we are doing something that makes sense. So let's not let go of it. And it's just been a ride from there.
Wow. I think something that people maybe misunderstand or have a different perspective on when it comes to entrepreneurship is that it's this really linear journey, right? So you start a business, and then you move to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I mean, you're also only 22 years old, which is so remarkable that you're in the space that you're in, and that also you're going to the pitches that you're going to, and you have the clientele that you do. I think that's a really remarkable story to tell. And I think that it's important to know that entrepreneurs look different, right? So at 22, you should be taken just as serious as somebody who's been in the game for 10, 11, 12 years, right?
Yes.
But also that at 22, there can be challenges that arise. And so I wanted to know, how do you think we as Black South Africans, young female entrepreneurs, what do you think some of the challenges that you're seeing in society that entrepreneurship can help sort of fix?
Okay, so we know that unemployment is a real thing in our country, and instead of the rates going down to at least motivate us, they just keep plummeting and going high. So speaking from a position that I am in as a young Black female entrepreneur, I believe that it is important for us to put ourselves in positions where we create opportunities not only for ourselves, but also for young people as well, and also older people as well, because at the end of the day, like I kind of treat entrepreneurship as a dialogue. Yes, it's exchange of value. You give me value, I give you money. I give you money, you give me value. But beyond that, like it's a dialogue. It's a story that's being told. People want to sell brands, for example. They are telling their brand stories. You give me money, I tell you a brand story. But like before telling your brand story, who else is involved in making that happen? You see, so like it's just about positioning ourselves to make sure that we create opportunities, not only opportunities that are like beneficial for us as young entrepreneurs, but opportunities that are like beneficial to the people around us, to our society. But now looking at the climate of things, it can be difficult. I won't lie, because I am young. I come from where I come from. There is already a certain perception about me. There is already an idea about me, like, okay, I am an entrepreneur. I could walk into a boardroom and it's full of white men, and I am here as a young Black woman. You can already see the contrast. You can already see the difference, and from that perception, a lot of conclusions can come up, like, we cannot give her the deal. She's too young. She's inexperienced, or she will not represent it the way we want to, or she'll just mess up our plans really of just dominating the world and being men, basically, I guess. So yeah, looking at the climate, it is difficult, but I believe that those challenges are meant to be there, because it is only through challenges like that that we get to know what is wrong and what is right, and we get to make better choices for future generations.
100%. I love that.
Yeah.
And I love how you're saying the intergenerational, right? So that it's important for us to collaborate. It's important for us to grow. It's important for us to have these conversations. And also, I guess, in South Africa, coming from what we've come from, coming from the history, there is this new generation of us that need to almost face that head on. And the historical context is really important, because there are rooms that we'll walk into that people would have already written you off on, right? And so it's learning to navigate that, and navigate, especially when you're looking for funding, sponsorships. There's so much nuance that maybe people who are not Black entrepreneurs wouldn't know about. There's conversations that we have with each other. There's warnings that we give each other that maybe it's not the same for white people. And I guess that's a bigger conversation for us to have. But I want to dive into what you currently do. So you come from a media, you have a media house, Unfiltered. Yes. And so I want to know, I come from JT Communications. It's the company that is backing our podcast. And so how do you see the media landscape, the PR landscape shifting in a post-COVID ChatGPT, TikTok, influencers? Traditional media is dying. Some say it's having a renaissance. I'm not sure. But what do you see the opportunities as, and how do you find navigating this space? Because it can be very tumultuous.
Yeah, okay. Well, actually, so there was a report that I was reading, right? I think 3-4 days back, if I'm not mistaken. They're saying that Gen Z is changing how media is being viewed and how information is being consumed. Like, for example, Google will come here and say, I am the master of all information. All the information that you need, you get it here. I am Google. And then a 16-year-old goes on TikTok
Yeah.
to search for the same thing that they could have found on Google. So it's like, even though TikTok was like, okay, this is a platform for just you guys to just shoot videos or do short form content, young people are introducing ways in which these platforms can be used. So that goes to say, I mean, Google and TikTok are just like one part of the whole thing. Like the whole dynamic is being changed in such a way that even businesses do not even see the point of spending money on billboards. Okay, they still do, but like, if we are being realistic, billboards, if you're to pass a billboard, you just pass it mindlessly. But when consuming, you're consuming consciously. And that's where brands want to be. That's where they want to be. Hence, now there's the rise of user-generated content. Before COVID, we didn't care if someone made a video saying, please check out this brand, it's been good for my skin. But every now and then, you scroll on TikTok, you scroll on Instagram, there's user-generated content, and brands are already jumping on that wave. And actually, I was very fortunate to actually get a client who actually introduced me to that wave. And they're based in Europe. So which goes to say that in South Africa, we are actually far behind in terms of the fourth industrial revolution. The first world countries, the European countries, are on the fifth industrial revolution. And they're already finding ways, implementing ways in which they can dominate, whether in business or wherever, right? And we are still lagging behind. So coming back to your question, I think it is important for us to really research, find ways in which we can really capitalize on this, because it is a growing market. Gen Z is taking the lead. And so it is important, even for that intergenerational collaboration that you speak of, to say Gen Z can actually lead the way in terms of how old business could move into the future. So basically, we hold the keys to how old business can survive 30, 40 years from now, because we are changing the landscape in terms of how content is being consumed, how content is being created, and how content is being used to brands and businesses' advantages. So, yeah.
No, I love that. And I think, you know what, it is a bigger conversation, right? Because there is this tension of, what is a validated source? Where am I getting information from? What am I using to get that information? And what is this brand identity that we're going for, right? So I feel like you can almost, just as a user of social media, I feel like there's some brand deals where you're like, oh, this feels like a brand deal. This feels like you're trying to sell me something. And you can see that this company maybe doesn't fully understand the landscape that they're in. But at the same point, it's important for us to have validated places, right? So I think I like what you're saying of integrating these new technologies into media, into radio, into podcasts. So instead of just listening to the radio, you can now listen to a podcast. You can find people who align with you and who maybe make you think a little bit differently because of the guests that they have on. Or you can watch a YouTube video and then go check out our TikTok and then go read an article. Like, I really like how there's so much information that we're able to access, and then hopefully hone that in a way that tells an authentic African story, because I know you're really passionate about that. That's something that we're really passionate about this side, is owning our narrative. Because I think for so long the West has told us who we are, has shown us who we are, and I think a lot of Africans would think the same way that I do, that that's just not who we are. That's not our story. That's not our brand. That's not our identity. And so we have the chance now to level that playing field a bit. I mean, you're seeing it with influencers who are coming from South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria. We're seeing it with the shows that are on Netflix and Showmax. And so I really like what you're saying of, like, Gen Z is this generation that is radical in the way that they think and brave, right? They will try anything. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, we try something else.
Exactly.
Which I think it's such a privilege, right? To be a part of a generation like that, where the stakes are high, but we're also willing to try and to fail and to try again.
Yeah, we'll get it right. That's the fact. I mean, 30, 50 years from now, there'll be another generation that is taking the lead, and we will have to be okay with that.
Right. I mean, like,
You will
we're
have
already
to be
talking about
okay with
Gen
that.
Alpha, right? Those kids are so cool, a little bit scary, but so cool. They know things that are just weird, but
Yeah.
like, and that's within like millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Alpha, like those are all happening almost in the same lifetime. But
Yeah.
because technology is moving so fast, we're now being judged on the technological advancements that we're in, not so much as like our people. But I think that's still very exciting.
Yeah. No, that's real. That's real.
Perfect. So, when you think about your business or, you know, your trajectory, I like to think that entrepreneurs need certain resources, they need certain advice, they need certain places that they can go to. I know you spoke about an incubation. I know that you are also big on mentorship and speaking to people from different businesses. What tips do you have for young entrepreneurs like yourself when they're trying to cement their space in maybe a market that feels like it's flooded or that it's really saturated? But I think that I personally think that there is enough space for everyone.
Well, I think first and foremost, you just have to be authentic in what you are wanting to bring into the world. Like, be intentional. I think it starts there, like with the intention to say, okay, I want to bring in a product, for example, that is vegan and does not promote animal cruelty, for example.
Right.
You are intentional about that. Like, you are wanting to change the world, right? That's it, the first point. The second point is you have to have thick skin, you know? And I am saying this as someone who has had mental breakdowns because I was running a business, as someone who has had immersive and, I don't know, crazy joy also because I'm running a business, you see? So you just need to have a thick skin before, like, so those two things, be intentional and have thick skin. And then don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I feel like as young people, we have this thing like, I'm young, I have all the energy, I'll figure it out. Or I can just get my influencer friend to repost and then get some sales and then that's it. But like, you need to ask for help from people who have walked this path. Sure, we have the trends. We are the ones controlling the trends. We are the ones controlling the hype. We are the ones changing the dynamic. But still, you need someone to hold your hand along the way. And I mean, I've been so fortunate enough to have someone, you know, even if it was just an hour consultation that was probably sponsored somewhere, you know, I never took that for granted because I needed someone who has walked the path to tell me that, okay, you can go down that path, but chances are you will crash. But go down that path, it's cool, but you'll crash, you know? So it's important to have someone guide you, hold your hand along the way, because even if you have the best product, even if you have the best service or the best company or the next big thing, you are still going to need people who are going to help you structure that and package it in a way that will be sustainable for yourself and your business in the long run, and also educate you, you know, because there's also vouchers out there. There are people who will look at you and say, okay, that's nice, and then manipulate you. I mean, it's business, right? And business is money. So when money is involved, there are weird people involved too. Even in business, you know, you can have someone in a suit and tie come to you and say, I can offer you this. And then you see that as the big break, only to find that what you're working on actually has the potential to break generational curses for your family, change how the world sees Africa, or change the world, basically, you see. So you need to be in a position to know when something is not for you, you know, like whether it's through the mentorship or the guiding or whatever, like just have good discernment. So that it's thick skin, it's good intention, and discernment, like those things. And also not being afraid to ask for help. Another one, the last one, is be in the room. Just be in the room. It doesn't matter. I've attended conferences that had nothing to do with the industry that I am in, right? And it's so crazy because in those conferences, I find someone with a stall there who's like, hey, I actually need social media management. You go to someone who's selling pots and they're like, actually, I need someone to help me sponsor posts because I have no idea. So just be in the room. You know, your next client could be there, your next collaboration could be there, you know, your next lesson could be there. Either way, just be in the room, make the right connections, start conversations. It's okay if you sound dumb. It's okay if you sound weird. Just go for it. You'll figure it out along the way.
No, I love that. And I think it is just it's a learning curve, right? We're all just trying. And I guess the more you speak to people, the more you're realizing everybody's just learning. So even these high practitioners who they caught in, they'll tell you at every seminar that they're in that I learn from the people that I'm speaking to. I learn new habits, new thoughts, new things. And so I think it's also important for us to have an attitude of being students and wanting to learn and constantly. And like how you said, just be in the room, right? Like just put yourself in the room, and you actually never know what could happen. So that's so special. You touched on something that is a little bit difficult when it comes to business, when it is either poaching of ideas, or I know you've had stuff stolen from you. So I wanted to know, how did you navigate that? Because we've spoken to people who have come on and told us about partnerships that have maybe gone awry. So how did you navigate that murky water, I guess?
Okay. So let me just start by saying the industry that we work in is cutthroat. The industry, like PR, marketing, like it's cutthroat, and people will go to crazy extents to be either ahead of you or to just not see you win. I remember in 2022, right, we had just set up studio in Vilagazi Street. The idea was we were going to be the first Afrocentric media agency that is situated at Vilagazi Street, which happens to be the most iconic street, like the most famous street in the world, basically, because 2 Nobel Prize winners lived there, you know, including Nelson Mandela. So it made sense. But I think a month or 2 later, our equipment was gone.
Sure.
Right. And at the same time, there was someone who literally just appeared out of nowhere and was like, yo, I want to work with you and whatnot. And then as soon as that ordeal happened, they disappeared. And they appeared as someone who, as people who needed, some sort of partnership. And I would use my own resources to keep the partnership alive. It wasn't okay. Right. It wasn't okay. I felt used. And then when I lost the equipment and we just had to leave that place because it just got worse. So he also disappeared, this person.
Right.
So it goes to show that also there are sharks. There are people who will see your potential and they will want it for themselves. And when one wrong thing starts happening, they will distance themselves from you. That was that. And then I guess from there, we just had to close shop temporarily and just find better ways to work. You know, I think it is during that time that I realized actually that maybe by being there, I would have limited myself by me wanting to hold on to the narrative that Vilagazi Street, the best agency, the first agency to be based at the most iconic street. I would have been limited to that when there's just so much happening in South Africa and the world and Africa, you know, so yeah.
I love that. And I guess it's just also building resilience, right? And seeing it as a lesson rather than this terrible thing that could have closed you down. And I mean, I think that's something that is the mark of an entrepreneur, the ability to get up again and to try again, because it isn't linear and there are these valleys and there are these really great mountains.
Yep.
So you mentioned that you have a client or clients in Europe. And so I am just intrigued to know why you chose to work outside of the continent and in Europe, but also what do you think the potential is for South Africans, for Africans to be working on the world, and what do you think the world is seeing when they look at us?
Okay, so it's so crazy actually how I got the client. He was looking for what I just mentioned earlier, user-generated content, right? And I was like, okay, what is that? I'm just apply anyway.
Okay.
I shot my shot. He was like, okay, I just need 5 people to talk about this product. They're an e-learning platform. At first they were MetsUp, but now they're Membi. He was like, okay, I need people to talk about this. We're going to fly it on our platforms and whatever. And because I didn't really understand the whole dynamic and how it worked, I got my mom to help me out. I'm like, girl, we need to shoot a video. So I'm going to give you a script and then you're going to read it, do the teleprompter thing. And you're going to say what you see there. And if this goes, then we are actually going to offer this as a service. She was willing to help me. It's just unfortunate that she passed on same year actually, but she was one of the people who really helped support this whole thing that I called craziness at first. So now when I submitted that, they were happy, and then they just kept on wanting more and more and more. And then that's when I was like, okay, so this is actually real. This is business. And when I actually now started looking at the amount of money and the amount of value that was exchanged, like during this whole partnership. And they were like, okay, we want to get onto a retainer. Then I was like, oh, for this? So it means that even things like, it's so crazy. What technology is introducing to us is innovative ways to make money.
Sure.
But we haven't caught on to that. Hence, I'm saying we are still trying to figure out the fourth industrial revolution and AI, whereas the people up there, like the first world countries, are already using what we are trying to figure out to advance themselves. And that is why they constantly are ahead of the curve, whether it's through trends or data or whatever, they are ahead of that. You see, so how we can then position ourselves as South Africans is to maybe attend international conferences, for example. Like, don't limit yourself to just South Africa, like even if it's online, even if it's an online webinar, just sign in, sit, listen, like you never know where the next opportunity is coming from. And then in terms of like the collaborations, I guess it's all about just reaching out, to say, hey, I can help export your brand, your European brand or your American brand to South Africa. And by the way, South Africa is a content hub now, if we are not aware. Because if we are taking a look at Tyler's success, for example, the recent win with the Springbok, like all these wins have positioned South Africa to be a content hub. And if businesses are not capitalizing on that to say, listen, I can bring your product here, or we can use South Africa as a mirror, as a reflector to get your product to other countries, it's fine. You don't have to launch your product here, but we can use South Africa because South Africa right now is leading the trends. South Africa is a content hub. So maybe if we use that as an advantage as South African businesses, whether you are in media, whether you do actual products, like capitalize on that. The world is literally watching.
Yeah.
The world is literally watching. Give them a show. That's all.
I love that. Give them a show, because I mean, like you're saying, it's not just content, right? I mean, there is Amapiano, there's Tyler, there's Blood and Water, there's the beautiful spaces that we have, which are being used for backdrops of Avengers and these really huge productions in Hollywood. And people are like, oh, where was that shot? Australia,
South
Canada?
Africa.
No. It was shot here at home. But I mean, look at our banking sector, look at our entrepreneurship, look at our educational institutions. I think you're so right. Like, the world is watching. And so it's important for us to not think that we are smaller than we actually are, and to own the space that we're in, which is so special. I also like what you're saying of, shoot your shot. Go overseas, look for something overseas, look for a webinar to join, and you never know.
You just never know. You never know, because like right now, people are wanting to come to South Africa, and like it's like we are still, as businesses, we haven't really caught on to this wave, because I think it's still maybe a bit of that obsession with wanting to be all corporate and suit and ties and paperwork and red tape and all that. But young people are out here closing deals and working with these people because they sort of like understand that 10 years from now, this will probably be relevant because everything is fast. So it's important for us to capitalize on that.
I love that. As we end, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
because I've asked you what advice would you give already, but are there any entrepreneurs, any businesses, any podcasts that you're currently listening to that you think we should be on the lookout for? I love learning about new entrepreneurs that are doing great things.
Well, there's one that I am actually listening to now by Mashudu, the Mesh Startup Podcast. He actually profiles like other entrepreneurs, and like you get to listen to other entrepreneurs share their stories, share their versions of what went wrong in what they're trying to build. And basically just you learn from their lessons. And then there's another one, but this one's more creative. They focus more on creative pioneers. It's called, I think, Kona Juda, if I'm not mistaken, the podcast. It's by Umsindisiwe Siko. I hope I'm pronouncing him correctly. That podcast is amazing. And the last one, if you want to know about marketing trends, like literally incredible ways of how to basically amplify your business, I would also recommend the Label Lion show. It's amazing. The woman is a trailblazer in the marketing industry and basically changing how marketing is being viewed in South Africa and Africa. So yeah, those are the top 3 I would recommend.
Perfect. We'll give them a listen.
Yes.
Before we go, are there any closing thoughts that you want to share with young entrepreneurs who maybe are thinking of starting a business or are in the throes of it and they're having a moment like you where something's been stolen or they're at the end of their funds or they're maybe just having a valley season?
Well, I like to see things, I don't know, spiritually or holistically, right? So I believe that everything happens for a reason, right? You losing something happens for a reason. You not getting accepted into that program was for a reason. It is never because you're not good enough or you are building a mediocre product or service. It's just not the right time, and that is okay. You take those rejections, you go back to the drawing board, and you keep working on it. Like the Unfiltered Talk was literally a podcast that almost got stolen. Right? The idea, the concept idea, just for the podcast, it was an idea that almost got stolen. But I revised throughout the years, and it's now a media house that's working with international clients. So that should be a testimony or testimony, to say even what you're building now will be totally different and unrecognizable 5 years from now. You just have to enjoy the journey and just keep the same intention throughout, and you'll be fine.
Perfect.
You'll be all right.
You'll be all right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leigh, for coming on our show. We really appreciate you taking the time and also just sharing your insights. We are so looking forward to obviously working with you more in the future, but also just watching your journey. You're so young, you're so passionate, and so I hope that your talk has inspired somebody who wants to start a business or is in business or has a friend in business. I just think that you've shared some really big insights with us, and so we're really grateful for you spending the time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I learned a lot from this conversation as well, because even the questions you're asking, I'm like, okay, let me think. Actually, that makes sense. So I'm learning also. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Yay. So please, will you guys follow our page, like and subscribe? We're ECAfrica on everything. Leigh, where can they find you?
Okay, so we are on Instagram at Unfiltered Media House, Facebook, Unfiltered Media House. We are not on Twitter or X because it's toxic. Yes, we are on those 2 platforms. And then we have a website, www.unfilteredmediahouse.africa.
Perfect. Thank you, Leigh. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for having me.